But nationalism and patriotism is quite a topic today. Some is misunderstanding, and then people have different perceptions on it. I know as I went through this presentation, I changed it because the original presentation had a lot of country and Western music in it. So it had a kind of like, I thought I was looking at Duck Dynasty when I was looking at it. So we had to modify it some, at least to what I believe that things should be. They're very simple definitions. The belief that your country is the best, you're taught nationalism. So once again, nationalism is believing that my country is the best. And that's okay, okay? We believe that our football team is the best. Our football team is the best football team in the world. That's why Chicago Bears is going to win the Super Bowl, because that's my belief. You might believe some other team, Saints, Dallas, then the other team called Texans, used to be known as Houston Oilers. But it's believing that yours is the best. It's better than everybody else. That's a good thing. That's not a bad thing, okay? But it can be bad if you don't keep it in perspective. Let's take a look at this short video.
In this History Illustrated video, we're going to go over the vocabulary word nationalism. And before we begin, I want to focus on this part right here, nation. There's a word inside of this word. Nation is often used the same way we use the word country. So I'm going to write country over here. So a country and a nation are very similar words. So this is about your country. So every country can participate in the idea of nationalism. But in this case, I'm going to use the USA as our example. So I'm going to put the flag up here. And in this case, nationalism is going to represent pride in our country. So pride, or another way of saying it, being very proud of your country. So nationalism is the idea that you are proud of your country. And I'm going to put another picture here. This here, number one. You can have number one. You can have the idea that you think your country is the best, so that you might create laws or other policies that you would want to make sure that your country stays number one. So you might want to implement a law that protects your idea of what makes your country great. So once again, nationalism basically means you are very proud of your country.
So I used the sports team as an analogy because we are very proud of our country. But we do not have to be very careful that we don't create rules that would make sure that our country stay number one, you know, like inflating the ball, stuff like that. So you got to always be fair. You can't cheat just to make sure that your country stays number one. But that's different. Some people say if you're not cheating, you're not trying to win. Okay, so I thought that gave a very good definition on your country. But when we talk about nationalism, we want to talk a little bit about how that caused wars. So a good example of that is we're going to see a little short clip on nationalism and World War I.
The rise of nationalism is key to understanding how World War I comes about.
The people of all the countries fighting rose up to defend the country that they loved. And because of that, they were willing to accept slaughter on a scale unparalleled.
This is a war between nations, and the national governments have to make an argument to their people about why they should sacrifice their lives, their time, their money for the war effort.
It also is a culmination of their own fears about colonialization, about this process where you have diverse people being brought into empires that really don't share their same cultural ideas, their same cultural identity. It's the problem of nationalism. It's the problem of nationalism expressed violently in this terrible war that cost Europe almost a generation of people.
Perfect illustration, Eastern Europe. Look at Serbia. Serbians are saying, we don't want to be ruled by the Austro-Hungarian Empire. That's an old, tired, imperialistic structure. We are our own country. It's the Serbians who assassinate Archduke Ferdinand and his wife Sophie, and of course, that's the trigger that begins the whole conflict.
The outbreak of the war intensifies national feelings. It also makes nationalism the language both of war and of the post-war settlement. And more than that, it made the people who had fought the war feel like they had earned something. So if you go to Versailles, if you go to the treaty negotiations, you can see them discussing the rights of small nations, the rights of national self-determination. Those are words that Wilson uses. And he wanted nations to be independent, discrete things.
We saw a world that would never again go to war. A world where squabbles between nations could be settled diplomatically, where they could not have to be settled militarily. This was to him a war and always. And I sincerely believe Wilson realized before he passed away that World War I had been for nothing.
So having pride in your country, believing your country is number one, it's a good thing, but it becomes problematic that countries use propaganda, which would be sophisticated untruths. Other people might say fake news, but they use propaganda to bring up feelings of nationalism that we're number one, and so we could go to war and we can beat these people because these people are the others. So nationalism brings into the concept of the others. Last night in the debate, once again, a question was asked about the 545 children that are in detention camps from immigration, but they can't find their parents. And one of the responses, I'm not going to say who, but one of the responses was, well, they're better off because their parents are thugs and rapists and hoodlums. And those were stereotypes put on a culture. And so once again, these were put out there so that people could feel that that they're doing the right thing in terms of a country policy. Once again, it's great that you support your football team, but you have to make sure that you don't create rules and regulations to make sure that your football team win at any cost. And so that's the same thing with nationalism. It's great to have pride, and we as Americans gain our independence. So has many other countries around the world because of their pride and wanting to be a country. The next thing is patriotism. Patriotism is an action. It's what you do to show your nationalism, pride and love for your country. So one is pride for your country, and patriotism, it adds another adjective, love for your country. And that's where so many people have many people get them confused. When you love something, you also want to see it improve. Let's take a look at a discussion of patriotism versus nationalism.
Donald Trump and his enablers often equate nationalism with patriotism, but this couldn't be further from the truth. Trump's nationalism is rooted in fear of outsiders and the belief that Americans, especially white Americans of European heritage, are inherently superior to others. Patriotism, by contrast, isn't about exclusion. It's about inclusion. It involves taking on a fair share of the burdens of keeping America going. Nationalism blasts immigrants as criminals, demands a border wall even when immigration is down, and scapegoats foreigners for our economic woes while ignoring real investments in the American people. This sort of we're better than anyone else nationalism, tinged with racism, typically emerges when demagogues build their base of power by fueling fears of others outside the nation's borders. Throughout history, demagogues have used anger to target scapegoats, thereby dividing and conquering, and distracting people from the real sources of their frustrations. As George Orwell dryly observed, although endlessly brooding on power, victory, defeat, and revenge, the nationalist is uninterested in what happens in the real world. Patriotism, on the other hand, is rooted in our common ideals. These ideals led Lincoln to proclaim that America might yet be the last best hope for humankind. These same ideals prompted Emma Lazarus, some 2 decades later, to welcome the world's tired, poor, huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Americans are not a race. We're not a creed. We're a conviction that all people are created equal, that people should be judged by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin, and that government should be of the people, by the people, and for the people. If we're losing our national identity, it's not because we're becoming browner or speaking more languages than we must have. It's because we are losing our sense of true patriotism. True patriots don't fuel racist or religious or ethnic divisions. They aren't homophobic, transphobic, or sexist. They don't hate others outside our borders. To the contrary, true patriots confirm the good that we have in common. They seek to strengthen and celebrate the we in we the people. What do you think? What does patriotism mean to you? Let us know in the comments. If you found this video informative, be sure to also watch our video on Trump's divide and conquer strategy. As always, thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe to this.
Okay, you'll have a chance at the end of this video to give your opinions for what you experienced today, what you have been seeing, as well as some thoughts on patriotism and nationalism. Let's look at another one. I'm going to stop here for a second. If you could unmute your mic. Was that patriotism or nationalism? What did you see there? It's one
It
of
was
my favorite commercials. Go ahead.
it was patriotism
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because they are celebrating what they have done.
It's good. It's good. Uh, Often my wife and I, when we were eating in public, once upon a time in the galaxy far, far away, long ago, we would go to Denny's or we would go to the Breakfast Club or whatever the situation might be. And sometimes there'll be police officers, maybe two of them, sitting down eating. And when I go to pay for my bill, I would ask the waiter to let me pay for their bill. And I wouldn't let them know, but they would know that someone in the restaurant paid for their bill. So I might be interested in police reforms, but if I'm having a situation with the Crips and the Bloods, I'm not going to call, my pastor. I'm going to call the police. Okay, so I appreciate the police. So I appreciate our men and soldiers in arms and for the parents who are there. So that's showing patriotism, but it's also our pride in our nation. Thank you very much. Here's another
You're welcome.
interesting. Thank you. Here's another interesting display of feelings regarding their country.
Fought very well. Sergeant Rollins is recommended that you receive a commendation. Yes, I think you should bear the regimental colors.
I'm stopped there for a second. When he said bear the regimental colors, a soldier in the wartime doing this type of fighting, they would always carry the flag. And so it was an honor. It showed that you loved the country, that you were patriotic, that you're going to carry the flag. And remember, whoever was carrying the flag, whether it was a United States flag or a Confederate flag, they became a target. So listen what he has to say.
It's considered quite an honor. Why not?
Well, wanted to say something, sir, but
Go ahead.
see, I ain't fighting this war for you, sir.
I see.
I mean, what's the point? Ain't nobody gonna win. It's just gonna go on and on.
Can't go on forever.
Yeah, but ain't nobody gonna win, sir.
Somebody's gonna win.
Who? You get you going back to Boston, the big house and all that. What about us? What do we get?
Well, you won't get anything if you lose. What are you gonna do?
Don't know, sir.
Stinks, I suppose.
Things bad. Ain't we all covered up in it too? I mean, ain't nobody clean. Be nice to get clean.
How do we do that?
We ain't helping kick in, sir. I still don't want to carry a flag.
Nationalism, once again, is pride in your country. Patriotism is the love for your country. So you just saw a soldier who was fighting in the Civil War. He was a slave. And he was just saying, look, I'm fighting for freedom, but basically I don't want to carry the flag. So, you know, it's a different perspectives. Let's take a quick look at Nazi Germany.
6 years of
Torch-bearing white nationalists clashing with...
Let me see, go back, oh, there you go.
6 years of National Socialism, the anniversary of the day in January 1933 when President Hindenburg called a new leader to take charge of the German people. How little did the world dream then what those 6 years would bring. Today, Germany regards those 6 years as a mounting climax of achievement. Today, Germany celebrates by lighting the Berlin night sky with 1,000,000 torches. Zero hour, the ancient Scottish.
Okay, what I wanted to show you was a night march parade in 1939. The Nationalist Socialist Party, known as the Nazis, that's what they did. And of course, when they marched, galvanized, they listened to the news saying that their country was the best, they were better than everybody else. And that's how they began to show their pride. I thought that was interesting almost 75 years ago, and yet here we are in the year 2000.
White nationalists clashing with counter-protesters on the campus of the University of Virginia.
Things have turned violent, and officials are bracing for a weekend of demonstrations like this. ABC's Stephanie Ramos is right there in Charlottesville for us this morning. Good morning to you, Stephanie.
Paula and Matt, good morning. This is where that Unite the Right rally took place. Behind me, hundreds of people gathered here on the University of Virginia's campus, chanting, and some of the crowds breaking out into fights. Overnight, a dramatic scene as white nationalists carrying torches and echoing chants flooded this major American college campus. The images calling back to segregation-era forms of intimidation. Several injured and one person arrested, led away in handcuffs, as hundreds of alt-right activists demonstrating at the University of Virginia clashed with counter-protesters. Police calling it an unlawful assembly, dispersing the crowds after fights break out between the two sides. Some protesters reportedly being hit in the face with pepper spray. Many overnight condemning the event, the mayor of Charlottesville calling it racist and intolerant, writing, "Everyone has a right under the First Amendment to express their opinion peaceably. So here's mine." He said in a statement on Facebook, "I am beyond disgusted by this unsanctioned and despicable display of visual intimidation on a college campus." What we saw here last night was meant to tee up today's event, a rally to prevent the removal of a Confederate statue. The governor says the National Guard will be on standby just in case things get out of hand. Paula, Matt, back over to you.
Thanks very much, Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the...
So you can see there is a long history regarding nationalism, political situations. It has even moved into our religious situation, where now you have what's known as religious nationalists. These are religious people who feel that they still want to make America great again, but it's all about nationalism. There was a writer, his name was James Baldwin, a great African-American writer. But he said something about loving America. "I love America more than any other country in the world. And exactly for this reason, I insist on the right to criticize her perpetually. So perpetually means I reserve the right to criticize her ongoingly. So if you love something, even us as parents, I'm quite sure your parents love you, but once and again, they might find it where they might have to criticize you or discipline you. So that's what he's saying here. If you love a country and you're patriotic, then you want to see your country grow in a positive way. That goes to one man takes a knee. It's a video. It may come up. Taking a knee while our NFL players protesting when they start to take a knee. So the video just basically talk about the fact that they're taking a knee to criticize the treatment that minorities are facing at the hands of the police. Some people specifically had said that was unpatriotic, but once again, patriotism is looking at how you can improve a country. What was interesting is he took a knee, then Nike created this commercial.
If people say your dreams are crazy, if they laugh at what you think you can do, good. Stay that way. Because what non-believers fail to understand is that calling a dream crazy is not an insult. It's a compliment. Don't try to be the fastest runner in your school or the fastest in the world. Be the fastest ever. Don't picture yourself wearing OBJ's jersey. Picture OBJ wearing yours. Don't settle for homecoming queen or linebacker. Do both. Lose 120 pounds and become an Ironman after beating the brain tumor. Don't believe you have to be like anybody to be somebody. If you're born a refugee, don't let it stop you from playing soccer for the national team at age 16. Don't become the best basketball player on the planet. Be bigger than basketball. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. When they talk about the greatest team in the history of the sport, make sure it's your team. If you have only one hand, don't just watch football, play it at the highest level. And if you're a girl from Compton, don't just become a tennis player. Become the greatest athlete ever. Yeah, that's more like it. So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough.
So I show that because one man takes a knee, the world takes a knee. So just think. Colin Powell took a knee, took a lot of heat for it. He said he took it because he loved his country. When George Floyd died because of a knee, then the world took a knee. From Iran to China to Iraq. So loving your country is more than just standing up for the flag and saluting, but it's loving your country enough that you will criticize her. If you want to be a true nationalist, or a true patriot? Let's look at why.
Why, despite enormous injustice, did these determined individuals fight so valiantly for freedoms they themselves did not enjoy? The answer to this question can be found in the letters, diaries, thoughts, and reflections of those who were there.
You'll be able to see this. I'm going to stop it because of its buffering.
Their words are relevant to every American and speak of courage, honor, duty, and sacrifice. A love of liberty.
They served their nation without their nation ever serving them. They served because they believed in this nation, they believed in the promise of our democracy, they believed in what the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution said. But for so many years, they were denied the rights and the privileges that other Americans enjoy. But there's a wonderful story. It is a story of a group of Americans who never lost their love of this country, never lost their faith. Oh, I'm Colin Powell. I was an American soldier for 35 years. I was a Black American soldier. And I followed in a long tradition of Black men and women who have served this nation since long before the Revolutionary War.
As history has vividly demonstrated, what ultimately needed to be asked wasn't would the Negro fight, but rather why. As African American servicemen and women continue to shed their blood in the defense of the United States, the answer to that question is abundantly clear. Like all Americans and all others, African Americans fought for love of liberty.
So, the question here for discussion on your post that's going to be assigned to you today, that is assigned to you today. Let me make it bigger. Number one, you want answer based on what you've heard. What is nationalism? What is patriotism? What is the difference? So you can type your answers in, we'll be observing them. Once again, nationalism is not a bad thing. It becomes problematic when you feel that you're number one and you want to cheat to stay number one. Patriotism is your love of your country, but you love it enough as a mother and father love a child and would discipline or seek to correct it. So that's why you see criticism. And what is the difference? Is there a difference? What is the difference? And then lastly, you saw that yes, even though we protest, but throughout this country history, that people of color, whether Black, brown, or other nationalities, even Native Americans, they fought for this country, showing their nationalism and their patriotism. And it wasn't as much as do they love their country, but what do their country love them? That's another slide we'll see. But yet it's there as people question whether or not someone could or they're not patriotic if they criticize the country. So you got a minute before you go to your next class. I'm going to stop and sharing here. Are there any thoughts? Anything that come to your mind? You can express yourself in the chat or in your discussion board. But once again, these are things that's kind of happening around you. You guys are 15, 14 years old. A lot is going on. We just encourage anybody. I don't care how old you are. Help somebody get to the pole. Take somebody's grandmother, as long as you make sure you social distance, you know. But that's nationalism and patriotism. It will be on our test. We will be talking about it. And we'll have a little quiz on it next week. We're going to combine nationalism, patriotism, and talking about country borders. That all kinds to seem to go together. Some people want to defend our borders by building a wall. Other people say build the wall, but George Lopez said we're building towns. You know, so that's how that goes. Okay. Well, if anybody have any questions, we'll definitely be meeting at 1:45 to 2 o'clock. If you wish to stop by and we can work with you on some of your questions. We'll also be just letting you know if there's any assignments that's are missing in the next week or two. We want you to go back and make sure you do all your assignments and get them.
Yes, yes. Dr. Simmons, Ms. Callis told me to remind all her students that they need to take their assessments. Also, all of my students, I said earlier, you both said earlier that y'all need to take y'all assessments. Please do them now.
And I'm speaking to my general public as I will be sharing this tape today. Come to you from WMAC 9 that you guys need to get your assignments done. We'll be contacting parents in the next week or two. We're heading into the end of our semester. This grade is going to count. So
exactly.
We appreciate everybody coming on today. And we look forward to seeing you on Monday as we'll be talking about borders and ending up with democracy and getting ready for our quiz.